I'm currently a high school math teacher. This story takes place a couple of years ago. I worked at a different high school, and I won't say where it is, but I was also a math teacher at that school as well. The school went from 7:50 a.m. to 2:40 p.m. every day. When school ended, I would stay after to grade assignments and prepare class for the next day. I never really knew exactly how long I would stay, but usually a couple of hours. One day, I was in my classroom by myself and had just finished grading a bunch of assignments. I would guess that it was about an hour and a half after school had ended. I went down the hall and printed off some things that I needed for class the next day. Then, I went back to my classroom to do a few more things. As I was working on and preparing for the next day's lesson, suddenly I heard a sound come over the school speakers. The phone on my desk rang as well. I picked it up and heard in the automated tone that the school was going under a lockdown, and this was not a drill. This was unusual, and I had never experienced a lockdown before. School was not going on, but there were still many teachers there and some students who were involved in after-school activities. I went over to the door, locked it, and then turned the lights out in the classroom. Then I went back to my desk. Of course, I was very curious why there was a lockdown going on, and I texted another teacher who I was friends with. They didn't know either, and I decided to just keep working at my desk. About 30 minutes passed, and we were still under a lockdown. I sat at my desk working when I thought I heard a slight noise. At first, I couldn't tell if it was coming from the hallway or inside my classroom. I stopped what I was doing and listened. I could now hear more clearly, but it didn't make any sense. It sounded like somebody was inside my classroom. I looked all around but didn't see anything strange. I sat there silently, just looking around my classroom for a good 2 or 3 minutes in a row. The noises stopped for the most part, but then finally I saw one of my cabinets in the back. It looked like there was a shoe sort of sticking out of one of them. The door was also cracked open a few inches. I couldn't tell if I was really seeing this at first. I kept watching it until I actually saw it move a little, then it moved back inside the cabinet entirely. When I saw this, I felt a large rush of adrenaline, but not in a good way. I knew there was somebody hiding in my classroom, and I did not know who they were. I texted a teacher down the hall that I knew, who also happened to still be there, and I told him what happened. I told him that I was going to head over to his room. Then I got up from my desk and tried not to panic as I walked over to the classroom door. When I was walking, it felt like forever, but eventually I did make it to the door. Then I unlocked it and walked outside of the room and into the hallway. From there, I walked a ways down the hall until I got to the classroom I was headed to. I was let in and felt much safer in there. We were able to report to the school about the person in my classroom. Then, I couldn't believe that somebody had been hiding in my room, and sure enough, he was found still hiding in my classroom. It was a guy who was on drugs, and he had broken a window in the back of the school and came inside. I really don't know what he was capable of or why he had chosen my classroom to hide in, but I'm sure glad that I saw him when I did. When I was in high school, some classes I liked, and some classes I really hated. One of the classes that I found especially boring was economics. Part of it was the teacher that I had. He was nice, but a really boring guy to listen to. Plus, he would often give us packets to work on instead of more interesting ways to learn. Because of this, I would occasionally go for longer bathroom breaks during class. It was my final class of the day, so at that point, I was struggling to just stay awake, and I couldn't wait to get home. I remember that one day, it was in the fall, and I got to econ class and was extra tired. It was Friday and had been a long week, so about 15 minutes into class, I asked if I could use the restroom. The answer was yes, which is what it typically was, and I walked out and into the hallways. I always felt good leaving a classroom when class was going on. I walked out to the nearest bathrooms and went inside. Nobody else was in there, and I went inside one of the stalls. As I was in there, I took out my headphones and put them in. Then I started playing some music on my phone and scrolled through Instagram. I would say about 5 minutes later, I got up and left the bathroom. When I got out into the hallway, I paused my music and took out my headphones. Then I walked the rest of the way back to class. When I got back to my classroom, the door was locked. I tried opening it a few times and then knocked on the door. I saw my teacher, Mr. Phelps, look out at me from the window. Then he opened up the door and let me in. When I got inside, I saw everybody in the class was sitting on the floor at the back of the room. They all looked at me as I walked in. Mr. Phelps told me to sit on the floor with the rest of the students and that we were under a lockdown. When I got to the back of the class and sat down, I asked if it was a drill. The kids around me were shaking their heads and saying no. Somebody asked me if I had seen anything. I told them no and explained that I just went to the bathroom and I didn't see anything at all. We all stayed sitting on the floor in the back of the classroom for probably like 40 minutes or so. I don't know exactly how long it was, but it sure felt like a really long time. None of us knew exactly what the lockdown was for, and we didn't hear anything out in the hallway either. There were a few times when somebody asked Mr. Phelps if he knew what was going on, but he always told us no. At last, the lockdown finally ended, and we were allowed to go home. Everybody wanted to find out why we had been under a lockdown in the first place, and within a few hours, everybody knew. But it hit me harder than most. The lockdown had been caused by a suspicious man breaking into the school. He was seen very shortly after entering, and when questioned by a teacher as to who he was, he ran. That caused the school to go under a lockdown, and the authorities were called. When the police arrived and searched the school, it took a while, but eventually the man was found. He was found hiding inside the bathroom, the same one that I had been in just before. I was clueless that there even had been a lockdown going on because I had my headphones in. I'm glad that I was, though, because I probably would have been scared about it. I do wonder how long after I had left the bathroom the man got there, though. This happened back when I was in middle school. I believe it was my 8th grade year. Back then, I would consider myself to be a pretty average kid. I was a decent student, but during that school year, I remember there was this kid named Mark who was in my grade, and I did not get along with him. Mark wasn't really part of my friend group, and he always seemed to be a bit more of a troublemaker. He would skip class a lot and things like that. I knew these things because I happened to have a bunch of classes with him that year, and the year prior as well. I don't exactly remember how it started, but I felt like he hated me and was always rude to me when we would have to talk to each other during class or something. One day at school, somebody in my friend group mentioned how Mark had casually said some negative things about me. Of course, I wasn't around when he said it, and it made me really angry. I ended up confronting Mark after class in the hallway, and I said some things that I probably shouldn't have. Looking back, it got a little bit heated, and some friends sort of had to calm us down. After that, a day or two went by without us speaking to each other or anything. Then came that memorable day. I don't remember exactly what day of the week it was, but probably later in the week. The classes that I had with Mark were second period and third period. Both classes went by without us so much as looking at each other. As far as I was concerned, I was going to ignore him for the rest of the school year. Then, during 5th hour, I had gone to my classroom and was on my phone waiting for class to start. I saw that I had received a text message from a new number. I opened it, and it said that it was Mark, and he wanted to patch things up with me. He then said that he wanted to meet me during 5th hour for 5 minutes at the South End bathrooms. I considered this, and at first didn't want anything to do with him, but then I thought about it again and figured that it would be best to sort things out with Mark. As much as I was angry with him, I didn't want to go into high school having enemies, and I thought maybe Mark would apologize to me or something like that. I texted Mark back that I would, and he texted back saying that he would be waiting. So when a good time in class came, I asked my teacher if I could go to the bathroom, and he said yes. I then walked down to the south bathrooms. The south bathrooms were the farthest bathrooms at the end of a hallway. They were popular because of how out of the way they were. My classroom was sort of far away, and it would take me almost 2 minutes to get there. I was lucky that my teacher for 5th period was not that strict, and we mostly just did busy work, so he wouldn't really care if I was gone for a little bit. As I was probably 3/4 of the way there, suddenly I heard noises come across the school speakers. At first, I was really confused. I didn't know what it could be, Then I saw a teacher a ways up come walking out of their classroom. When she saw me, she called me over to her class. I went with her, but I still had no idea what was happening. She told me that we ran a lockdown now, and I had to stay inside her classroom until it was over. I could see that there were no other students inside the classroom. I recognized her, but I never had a class with this particular teacher. She told me that she did not have class during this hour, and I waited inside her classroom for maybe 10 minutes until the lockdown was lifted. It was very fast, and I remember that afterward, I was sent back to my original classroom. When I had made it back there, I was only there for like a minute, and then the principal herself knocked on her classroom door. I then was asked to go with her. All of these things happened really fast, and I was confused until I was later told what was going on. Apparently, Mark had invited me to talk to him at one of the bathrooms, and then told one of his friends that he didn't plan to talk to me when I got there, but to, quote, mess me up bad. I was told that he was seen by another student walking to the bathrooms with a possible weapon. What weapon he had, or what he was using as a weapon, I never found out, and I don't know if I want to anyways. When the kid saw him, he reported it to his teacher, which caused the lockdown. He was quickly found, and luckily, the teacher spotted me before I made it to the bathrooms. Mark ended up getting expelled from our school for this incident.